What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views and live specials I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, airing on the network in August of 2016, another event I was in attendance for. So I fucking love this show. Maybe not the, but one of the best shows I've ever attended. It was that much fun, which you can never expect anything less when you go to an NXT show. I've been to 3 house shows and 3 takeovers by this point. All of them have been awesome. This one was no exception. After the first installment of TakeOver Brooklyn delivered in spades, expectations were pretty high for this show. They set the bar pretty high with TakeOver Brooklyn 1, but I would certainly say they lived up to the lofty expectations on this show by putting forth such an exceptional event. So anyway, we'll kick it off here. Well, the opening video package I thought was worth noting. They had this video package with Austin Aries, Samoa Joe, Nakamura, The Revival, talking all about, and Bobby Roode, all about where these guys and women were 1 year ago. Austin Aries, obviously they wouldn't say that, but Austin Aries, Samoa Joe, or no, Samoa Joe is a TakeOver Brooklyn 1. Austin Aries, Bobby Roode would be in TNA. Asuka was at TakeOver, but in the crowd. The Revival wrestled on the pre-show for a future episode of NXT. Bayley was at TakeOver, winning the NXT Women's Championship. No Way Jose was still at the Performance Center. You know, all these other people were still in. Andrade Cien Almas was in Mexico. All these other people, you know, Nakamura in Japan. So all these people had come from different walks of life to join NXT on this night for what would be a great show. So we kick off the show with the opener between Austin Aries and No Way Jose. It sounds like, oh, that wouldn't be a great match on paper, but this was a really, really fun match. Definitely my favorite Austin Aries match in NXT. Love the Nakamura match, don't get me wrong, but I really, really like this match. I was there for it, so that's a bit different, of course. But I thought these two worked really, really well together. No Way Jose didn't really have many memorable matches, if any at all, prior to this point. He had debuted in April. He had formed something of a friendship with Aries, who wasn't really getting it done. He had lost to Nakamura and a few others. So it was unknown how he would fare in NXT, but No Way Jose's like, embrace the power of positivity, and then Aries would fucking knock him on his ass with an elbow on the commentary table, thus kicking off their feud and turning Aries heel. Aries is a good babyface, but he's always been way better as a heel. And that was evident during this match. He came out looking like he had found his footing as a character. No Way Jose, the crowd was behind him. I went nuts for his theme song. This was a really, really fun match. Aries walked away with the victory in clean fashion, which I was surprised by. It would make sense based off what would happen afterwards, but No Way Jose lost nothing in defeat. He had a really, really good showing here. Unfortunately, they've done nothing with him since. He's been fed to the likes of Lars Sullivan and Andrade Cien Almas and all these other guys. He really hasn't. I don't think he's even been on a takeover since then, since a year ago. But still, he had a pretty prominent push in the beginning with a loss to Aries, and then it was all kind of downhill from there. But regardless, a very, very fun opening match. Aries scores the victory, continues to beat up on No Way Jose afterward until the music of Hideo Itami hits. He comes down to the ring, confronts Aries, again, knocks him on his ass, hits him right in the fucking head with his loafers on, and then hits him with a GTS, the first ever televised GTS in the 2 years that Tommy had been on NXT. The place went fucking nuts. I went nuts. It was awesome. And I'm really sad we never got that feud. Tommy got hurt. Aries got hurt. When Aries got back, he was on the main roster. He has since quit, and Tommy is still in NXT. So it sucks, but it was fun while it lasted, and it was a really, really cool moment. So I thought this was great, and it really kicked off the show on a high note, to say the least. After that, we had the in-ring debut of Ember Moon taking on Billie Kay in a fine match. Nothing too special about it, but the finisher of Ember Moon's, the Solar Eclipse, or the Eclipse, or whatever she calls it. I think it's the Eclipse. It's a fucking phenomenal move. The stunner off the top rope. People were stunned, no pun intended, by the move when she hit it. And it was a great, awesome-looking finisher to kick off her her NXT run with a bang by debuting her new finisher and emerging victorious over Billie Kay. After that, another in-ring debut on the show from Bobby Roode, taking on Andrade Cien Almas, who wasn't really clicking with the audience. He got some boos. You know, while I was there, I could hear him audibly, some boos from the audience. People went nuts for Bobby Roode. They loved the theme song when he debuted on NXT TV a few weeks prior to this. They sang it in Brooklyn. And it was great. It was so awesome to be a part of. And Roode came across looking like a fucking star. He was so great here. The match itself was solid. It was well wrestled. There's nothing too notable about it, but Rude came across looking great in his in-ring debut in NXT, making short work of the former La Sombra, Andrade Cien Almas, and a really great debut that got people talking with the entrance theme alone. After that, we get to the real in-ring action in the show. For the NXT Tag Team titles, the Revival defending the titles against DIY. I think they debuted that name on this show. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. This was a great fucking match. I can't wait to review and rewatch TakeOver Toronto, because the tag title match they had on that show was stellar. This one was also really good. I would put the rematch over this one, but this is up there too. This was tag team wrestling at its finest. Again, the little things that made this match so great. And it was right before this that Gargano and Ciampa, they faced off one-on-one in the Cruiserweight Classic. So when Ciampa was walking back up the ramp with Gargano, it looked like he would turn on him or turn on him in the match. Gargano, in the end, had to tap out to like a knee breaker or whatever at the hands of Scott Dawson. Or maybe it was Wilder, but I'm pretty sure it was Dawson. So it looked like Ciampa was going to get pissed, turn on Gargano. He didn't. He held it together, which was cool. And obviously they would save the split for after they lost the tag titles. They would win the titles, lose the titles, and they would save the split for TakeOver Chicago earlier this year. Now Ciampa got hurt, and hopefully they feud when he gets back. But this was a lot of fun. Gargano was such a perfect babyface. They looked like at one point they had the match won. We knew in the arena they did not win the titles because we could see, I think it was Wilder, one of them, one member of the Revival put the other one's foot on the rope. So we kind of knew that he wasn't gonna, they weren't gonna win the championships there. But the camera angle watching it back was so great because you couldn't see the foot on the rope or near the rope. So it looked like DIY was going to win. So that was a great near fall. People were super into this. The hottest match of the night by far. And in the end, like I said, the Revival maintaining their possession of the NXT Tag Team titles, keeping the feud alive, which was the best decision. Because their rematch in Toronto was unreal. So great match. After that, for the NXT Women's Championship, Asuka defending against Bayley in a rematch from TakeOver Dallas, which I talked about in my Dallas review a few weeks ago. That was a good match. Not quite great. I thought this was a great match. Way better than the initial encounter. I thought both women came across here looking intense, looking strong. Bayley had a really good outing here, even in defeat, getting kicked right in the fucking head by Asuka to retain her championship. But yeah, just a really good match. They told a solid story. We kind of knew Bayley wouldn't win. We all figured that she was main roster bound. But the match itself was much more entertaining, in my opinion. The crowd was much more into this than they were the Dallas match months earlier over WrestleMania 32 weekend. But in the end, Asuka's still the NXT Women's Champion. Bayley walks off and giving her final farewell, which we didn't know at the time, but we kind of figured, to NXT, kissing the stage before she would walk off and debut on Raw 2 days later. And then in the main event for the NXT Championship, Shinsuke Nakamura knocking off Samoa Joe for the belt. Another really good match with good near falls. Now, we all kind of figured Nakamura would win the belt, but you never really know. Now, NXT usually gets it right, and they did on this show. Nakamura's entrance, again, unlike anything I've ever seen in person. With the violinist, I think his name was Lee England Jr. The guy is so incredibly talented, and it made for one of the most amazing atmospheres I've ever been a part of. People were singing the song before the match, during the match, after the match, in the hallways. It was unreal. Unlike anything, like I said, I've ever been a part of. The match itself was really good. And I also like the contrast there, too. Nakamura comes out with the over-the-top entrance. Samoa Joe comes out like a fucking bat out of hell. He's ready to kick some ass. I thought that was really cool. So they worked a really hard-hitting match. Very enjoyable contest. In the end, Nakamura hitting the Kinshasa, but it would not be enough for the 3 count. He would hit it again to clinch his first ever NXT championship in an unforgettable moment with the celebration. It was just a beautiful thing to say. Beautiful thing to witness, especially in person. To close out an amazing TakeOver event in Brooklyn. Matching, if not exceeding, in my opinion, the first TakeOver from the year prior. Because I thought it had better matches, more memorable moments. You had the really fun opener. I mean, this is what, to me, I thought TakeOver Brooklyn 2 is better than the first. Now, the first one, it's hard to touch because it was the first one, outside the Full Sail University setting. But on this show, you had Aries getting hit with a GTS, the first ever televised GTS from Atami. Ember Moon debuting, Bobby Roode debuting with his glorious entrance. The Revival and DIY ripping it up. Now, it wasn't quite as good as Bayley and Banks from the year prior, but it was pretty damn close. Asuka and Bayley having another great match, an awesome women's match in the show, and a strong main event with a new champion crowned. That, to me, made this show top the previous year's installment, but it comes close. Regardless of what you think of the show compared to the first one, there's no question that it was fucking awesome. So watch it back. I always enjoy watching it. I think I've watched this show back at least 3 or 4 times. The first one I've seen at least a dozen times, but this one maybe 3 or 4 or 5, because it's a lot of fun to watch, because I thought the crowd was great, the matches delivered, and it made me excited for the future of NXT. So those are my thoughts on NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Overall, an outstanding event. I more than recommend it. You watch it and check it out on the WWE Network. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe, and share the video. All that stuff is amazingly appreciated. Next week, so in the next 2 editions, we're wrapping up my WWE reviews, at least, the main ones. I'll be back to review the occasional TakeOver from last year or the occasional, WWE pay-per-view from a year ago. But beyond that, we're wrapping up the regular themed shows for WWE and NXT. Because in 3 weeks' time, I'll be reviewing, I think it's the final Tuesday of November, my first ever WCW or ECW pay-per-view. The tweet is up now. Go vote. Go check out the votes. Tweet me. Drop a comment with whatever you want me to review. A great WCW pay-per-view, a good WCW pay-per-view, an awful WCW pay-per-view. Whatever you want me to review, let me know. I'll talk about it right here on the show. And my first ever non-WWE WrestleRant video at the end of the month of November. That being said, guys, thank you as always for checking out the show, listening. It's greatly appreciated. Stay awesome, guys. Enjoy the rest of the week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.